I can't resist. I'm making a level editor. Okay, hello all you crazy people out there. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games, and let's make some games. So this is a tower defense game. In the last video last week, I added a skybox and some 3D lighting, and that made the world look a lot more alive and have a lot more depth, even though it has the exact same amount of depth that it had before with the 3D perspective camera. Anyway, so. Designing levels. This is going to be probably the last, level design, game design, world design video for a little while before I move back to gameplay mechanics, shortly. As I mentioned, I've kind of sort of got the beginnings of one by the nature of this thing being a tower defense game. You can click and you can place things in the world. Those happen to be towers right now that have gameplay significance. But with just a little bit of retrofitting, that could be changed to trees or something like that, which would I died again, which I could do things like save to a file and then read out of the file later. So let's do that. Let's throw my notebook on the floor. So normally when I make a game, if I can find the project, normally when I make a game I would do something like this. So there would be a big old unnecessarily complicated level editor. You could click on things and edit their properties, and you could do various things with that. One, this is way overkill for what I'm trying to do now, and two, while I don't mind using a couple script libraries like the one that I wrote for lighting shaders in the last video, and I've mentioned Scribble and SPart for 3D particles. I don't want to just completely shove this sideways into something like this, because I want this video series to be as complete start to finish as possible. So instead I'm going to be doing something very basic. Instead of, let's see. So instead of spawning in a bunch of stuff, let's comment this section out. I'm going to run the game again just to see what it looks like without any of that. And so now we're back with an empty room. The game is running pretty fast, actually. That is faster than I'm used to seeing for an empty project, even about 4,000 FPS. FPS real in an empty project. And we can, let's say, create two modes. Let's see, what happens when you click? What is the code that runs when you click? This happens when you click. So I'm going to create two modes. They're going to be the gameplay mode and the editor mode. And the game editor is just going to be built into the game. I am not going to make an external third party, well, I guess it would be first party because it's me making it, an external tool to make levels for this thing. There is no point. That is far more effort than I am willing to expend for this series. And I will create a variable and assign it to one of those two things. I guess I might as well start out with gameplay. So, we'll toggle between those with, let's say, the tab key, or... yeah, the tab key sounds good. If you press the tab key, and we're just going to toggle it back and forth. So so this is a conditional operator or a ternary operator, depending on who you ask. This is a shorthand for an if statement. If the gameplay mode is equal to gameplay when you hit the tab key, it's going to switch to the editor mode, and if it's in the editor mode, it's going to switch to the gameplay mode. So it's going to toggle back and forth. Let's do something to indicate which mode we're in on the UI layer. And we can say draw the player's health and money. Or we can draw just some instructive text on the screen that says something like that. Okay, there's also the matter of actually having the game running, and you can see I can hit the tab key and toggle between. There's the matter of having the game running while you're in gameplay mode. I am going to... Let's see, in camera.update, that just means the camera, right? That doesn't do gameplay things. It shouldn't do gameplay things. Okay, good. That just does stuff that is not going to affect gameplay. Let's see, so the wave update shouldn't happen. The entity update shouldn't happen if you're in edit mode. I am going to say if... And you can use an if statement or a switch statement for this, I don't really care. Gameplay mode... So if you're doing gameplay stuff, run all that code, and we'll just indent that so we can make heads or tails of it. Otherwise, none of that is going to happen. But we will do things such as spawning trees and rocks and whatever if you click a thing. Okay. So if I hit the spacebar, we're going to spawn in things, and if I hit tab, those guys are going to freeze. This is effectively a pause system, come to think of it. Whenever I get around to making a pause menu of sorts, it's probably going to be very similar to this. Anyway, I can commit this change. This is... adding a separate gameplay and editor mode. Alright, notebook, what do we have to do next? Okay, that's fine. I did not go into detail about what I want to do next, except for just spawning things in. So, if you're in gameplay mode, and the code folding for that is not quite working the way I'd wish it was working. So I'll do it manually with foldable regions. And let's collapse, not that, but that whole thing so that I can see a little bit better. And if you click, now instead of spawning a tower, we're going to spawn a... How did it work? It is all entities. It is all entities. Did towers add themselves to a separate list by any chance? They did not. So everything is currently in one entity list. That is fine. I will deal with that however I need to deal with that later. So here we're kind of... I'm going to copy some of this code and reuse it for other purposes. This is... We're essentially just picking a random tower. It's not quite random, but it's random enough. Let's see. There is a lookup map of all of the objects, which I believe is vertex buffers, which have been loaded from files. Where did those guys get loaded? Okay, here they are. These things get added to the lookup DS map based on their name, so I will change that to... I will make a secondary list, rather, of very much the same thing. So we're going to add the vertex buffer to the DS map, with key being its file name, and we're just going to add the file name to the list, to the respective list. And that will allow us to do things like iterate over, or pick a random element out, or pick any random element out, I should say, rather than having to do weird DS map things, since you're not really supposed to iterate over those. And instead of spawning it at the XX and YY of a randomly chosen point, we will spawn those things at... How is it done in towers? It is just position, which is camera.getFloorIntersect. Okay. We're going to be spawning it at the location of the mouse. Oh, that's already done there. Do I want to say position.z? Not really, since it's pretty much always going to be on the floor. I could theoretically do height here, with hills and stuff. I don't know if I want to at this point. ENV object names. What is it? ENV object list, environment object list. And we don't need any of that since that's just fetching the next thing in the DS map. I'm going to randomize this. What is this? DS list size. And I'm going to pick a random element, a random integer that is within the list. And that should be good for spawning trees and rocks and flowers and mushrooms and whatever else. On the subject of not using the room editor for this sort of thing, and the game crashed, that is a string expecting a number, and that is because that thing in the list returns a string, and I would like to look up that string in the map instead. So, on the subject of not using the room editor for this, there is a possible series for making a game start to finish that I need to be in edit mode, that I might do after this, which I have planned to use the room editor. That is still very much up in the air. Some people do use the Game Maker room editor for 3D things. I do not, but there isn't like a technical reason you can't if that fulfills all your needs. Anyway, you see where this is going. There's like nothing else I can do to these things. I can't select one again after clicking it. If I just clicked again on a thing, it would spawn a new one. I can't. I obviously don't have a way to save these to load them in the future, which I should do. Let's see. This video might end up going a little bit long. I'm undecided on what my preferred way to like create a proper editor for this will be. I don't know. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to do selecting things by clicking on them eventually for towers so that you can like do things with them after you spawn them, I guess. I have no 3D collision system in place here. I don't think I want a full 3D collision system because, like I said, a lot of this is going to take place on a grid. So what I might do instead is like approximate it so that it's good enough. We'll see in the future. In the meantime, we'll commit that change. And I guess there's the matter of saving things to a file. Instead of saying like Control S or something, since I don't really want to mess with modifier keys, I'll say F1 to save instead. It's generally acceptable to use the function keys and stuff when you're in when you're making software, more so than it is in games. Let us save our get save file name. The filter is going to be, let's say, what should the file extension be? How about bug? That'll be the file extension, and the file name will be map.bug or something along those lines. Assuming you do select a file to save and the function does not return an empty string, we will do something. We will go and serialize that. I'm going to make this a function. Is there a map object yet? There probably should be. For the time being, this will not be a map object. Later on, I will get around to doing more than one map. Is that a good idea to say? Is that going to make my life more miserable in the future? It probably will, right? Alright, well, I don't want this video to run on forever. I'm just going to do saving and loading in this video, and that's it. I'm not going to do so much work that it's going to make my life miserable in the future. At least, hopefully not. Save map equals function. You know what I can do? Instead of checking that the file name is not an empty string here, I can check it inside the save map function. And then, assuming that is not true, we will simply loop through the all entities list and save them. This is probably just going to be JSON. If I really wanted this to be super optimal, I would use a binary buffer. But JSON is much easier to work with. I don't want to like optimize this to the point that the videos are hard for people to follow. So I think I'll just use JSON. Now the question is, do I want to use JSON or struct JSON? Because while I'm on the subject of using GML extensions, Juju Adams did write a struct to JSON set of code, which I can use, and I think that would be easier than using DS maps. Anyway, let's see. Actually, I don't know if that... Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to give this a constructor. I'm just going to make it a anonymous blob of data because it's not something I'm going to need to construct on many occasions. So the save underscore JSON is going to contain an array of entities, which is just going to be an empty array. You really should... That should be a comma. You really should not treat arrays as DS lists by appending things onto them. But since this is not going to be a gameplay thing, since this is just going to be a game editor thing, I care less. The reason being that if you have every time you append something onto an array, the array is copied to a new location and the original is deleted because arrays are fixed size and can't grow, whereas a DS list goes about it more intelligently under the hood. Okay, you know what? I don't even have to do that. That's probably going to be more work than what I could do, which would just be manually create an array of the size of the entity list, and I'm going to initialize it to undefined. I hope Juju's struct and object parser can handle undefined. If it doesn't, then, well, I'm screwed. Let's see. Let's go and give entities a save method. Which I'm going to call from here. We are getting really object-oriented right now. And it's going to take a save JSON thing. And some of them won't do anything. Oh, it'll also take an index so that it knows what to actually put in that slot in the save JSON.
Hey.
This is going to look different for different things. And by that, I mostly mean it's going to be empty for things like bullets and towers and foes and stuff like that don't need to be saved. It's only actually going to contain code for the environment entities. I did call it that, right? Yeah. Everything else is just going to save undefined, and when it gets loaded back into the game, it'll be ignored. Environmental things, on the other hand, are going to save their own data, and that is going to be its position in the world, position, rotation, scale. Can I don't think I need self for that. I think I can just get away with, nope. I think I can just get away with doing this. And those should be commas, and not semicolons, the way I tend to do. And it'll also, they'll also want the name of their vertex buffer files. If I was being thorough, I wouldn't save entities by their name. I would give them a unique ID or something like that and save that instead, so that if I were to change the file name, they wouldn't like get lost or anything. But I am being less thorough and more I want to get through this in a reasonable amount of time on recording. So instead, when you create an environmental entity, we're going to also pass it a save name, which is just going to be the file name, and it'll use that to save and load. I'll call that spawn name instead of spawn thing. Thing is a funny sounding word, but it's not super helpful for telling you what your code does. Okay. So we've created the save structure. Right? We've created the save structure. And let's run this, spawn a few things in, including towers and stuff that shouldn't be saved, and hit Control S or F1, whatever, just to see if it does what I want it to. So those are some gameplay things. Here are some world things, and F1 is going to bring up a file finder. I'm going to save this into, where am I going to save this? I'm going to save this into my own included files. Where's Bombardier? Game Maker Studio 2, Bombardier, data files. I'm going to create a new folder called Maps. And I'm going to call it, like, map1.bug or something like that. And it did indeed go through, although it would not have actually saved anything since I didn't actually write a file to anywhere. So that's good. I'm convinced. I guess if I wanted to test it, I could show debug message the result of the save JSON to see if all the data is there, but I'm gonna look at that in a minute anyway. Where is, if I were to open it on another tab, Juju's struct and object parser, and struct and array parser for 2.3. Does it say anything about undefined? No idea. Anyway, I will grab this release. I have not actually used Snap before this, but I have obviously talked to Juju about it, and I've talked to other people who have used it, and it's seems pretty good. Come on, are we gonna actually show that in Explorer so that I can load it into the game? Apparently not. Snap 311. Just gonna drop that in my utilities folder with all my other yo-yo extension archives, including like a dozen versions of Scribble. All right. What does this look like? Okay, so that's just a bunch of GML files. Add all. On the one hand, writing all your code yourself. On the other hand, a big part of game dev is not reinventing the wheel and knowing when other people have done the work for you. I don't want to use anything huge like any external game editor or anything like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, but I also definitely don't want to waste time and videos and my voice reinventing the wheel. Let's see. So I've imported Snap to JSON. I could probably delete all the things that I am not interested in using, such as ini and CSV and XML and that sort of thing. But let's see. This is a struct/array. Can contain structs, arrays, strings, and numbers. Will not encode lists, maps, etc. Whether the format should be human readable, which I assume involves writing in white space, which is rather unnecessary. Sort struct variable names in ascending alphabetical order as per DSList sort. Okay. I'm getting the feeling, since undefined values are not mentioned here, I'm getting the feeling that I should not have undefined. in my arrays. So instead I'll say something like, I'll just save a 0 instead of a struct up here. That would probably be safer. I can just check for is 0 when I load. Okay. Also, yeah, I will deep copy from binary CSV any string. From binary might be useful in the future. I'm not planning on it, but I won't delete it. So CSV any string. I have no intention of using XML. I have no intention of using CSV. Was not there a toInny? Or is that just loading out in any? Alright, who cares? Nobody likes any, except for people who do like any. Message pack. That's just another serialization format, right? I'm pretty sure it is. I will get rid of message pack also. Alright, deep copy I'll leave just in case I need to clone an object. String from file is for just loading the contents of a buffer in text form. Okay. Is this used anywhere? It is not used anywhere. I can just delete that. That is something that I can do myself. Okay. I should probably put like asset credits in the README of this repository one of these days. I'll do that at the end of this video. All right, so that's going to be a very long string printed in the console, but we'll make do. I have a feeling I might use binary later in development when it gets close to releasing things, because that's generally a lot faster to parse than JSON, especially considering that we are using native GML for Snap, or at least Juju's using native GML for Snap instead of some compiled code. If I were to F1, I need to be in edit mode. If I were to F1, map, and I realized that there wasn't really a point in giving it a file name because nothing is actually being written yet, but it looks like... Okay, so the vector 6 is having its nulls written, which is hilarious. Which are turning into strings containing null, which aren't really a big problem, but it looks like otherwise everything is in order. That is indeed JSON. Saving a position, a rotation, and a scale. Good, good. Okay. The buffer would be of size... The length of the JSON string. The type would be buffer fixed. The alignment would be 1. If you create a buffer, the first thing that you should always do is write code to delete the buffer when you're done. And we can say buffer write a string and the JSON string, and we can buffer save the file name in the buffer, and we have a JSON file. All right, so let's do this again. I know I've done this several times now, and the recording has gone on to 36 minutes. Hopefully that's not how long the final video is. Let's send in some ants to see what is saved and what is not. Let's stick a bunch of those in the world. Let's F1. Map 1, and I saw that that flashed red for a minute, so it was doing a lot of processing. Which means it was doing something, probably writing stuff to a file. And where are, I'm done with that. Those are chickens, which I'm done with for the time being. If I go in the data files, in the maps folder, map1.bug, and there is nothing in there. That is a 0 kilobyte file. Why is that? Like, if I were to open this in a hex editor, it would be an empty file, right? It says 0 bytes. Windows, you can ask me how I want to open the file. There's always Notepad++, which is fine if you're using JSON. Yeah, that's an empty file. Okay, time to figure out why that's happening. I know the string was being written in, and I guess this is a point where I should probably hit F9, create a breakpoint, and run the debugger. I know the string was being written since I printed it out to the console and it was all there. It's just not ending up in the file. So let me allow access to that debugger that's trying to get through the firewall. Let me do my usual that. The instruction text is sitting on top of itself, which I don't really want. I'm just going to do a bunch of that. Save over map 1. And now it's going to hit the breakpoint. And this is a bit of a lesson in debugging. I have not made any videos on debugging so far. Debugger, Windows, there should be a buffers. Buffers, there we go. This is the only one that exists. Hey, sir, where are you? Okay, it's index... Alright, it's being weird. It's index 0. That is a buffer that is size 3.5 kilobytes and it's full of zeros. And I don't know why. And we're gonna find out why. Strings and text are treated similarly in buffers, but maybe writing text into a file would make it happier. Generally, if you're just trying to save a string to a text file, buffer text is all you need, because it doesn't include the terminating null at the end. So I probably should be doing that anyway, but just gonna take a shot in the dark, and that worked. I do not know. There it is. If I were to copy and paste this into a JSON beautifier, or if I were to use the pretty print argument and snap to JSON, this would contain all the information. All right, so you can see there's an array of entities. Some of those are zeros because those are the 2 towers that I placed at the beginning, and the rest of these contain a position, a name, a rotation, and a scale. Not alphabetized because why would you need to alphabetize these? They are keys in the DS map. They are unordered. Okay, that's fine, I guess. I can get rid of that breakpoint. Let us commit that change. For the time being, I won't include the maps in the commit. Actually, I might as well. It's just text. Text is as good as anything on source control. Write the level data to files. All right, and now there's the matter of loading. I'm going to say load map is also going to be a method. Firstly, if not file exists, return, don't load it. Actually, you know what? I can try and catch the whole thing, can I? Yeah, let's try and catch. This is kind of what try and catch is for. And that could be catching any error, so that's a file not found or some malformed file data or anything. Var buffer equals buffer load. We are going to be loading the file name. Actually, I will initialize for the sake of cleaning up. Outside the try-catch block, buffer is going to be buffer load with the file name of our JSON string is going to equal buffer read. And it's going to be buffer text because that's what we put in. the save JSON, or the load JSON, I guess it would be in this case, is going to be snap from JSON. You could feed buffer read straight into this, but there's no real reason to. And that's going to be what we created here. So now we can iterate over each of the things in save.json.entities. The reason that entities is a member of save.json and not just the root element is because it's likely in the future that things such as like extra map data that isn't strictly the entities in the map are going to be included. Let's array length. I get happy every time I get to type array length instead of array length 1D. Array length load JSON dot entities. No capital letters there, and this is going to be what was loaded out. So to start with, we can just print that out. Otherwise, we can continue on our way. Let's see. Yes, I think I will stop the game. Stop the game, stop the game. I will stop the game. There's one more thing I'm going to want to do to this. Probably. All right, I'll worry about that later. Oh, you know what? Is that was never actually run. This I can safely delete now. Map1.bug. Let's actually load the map. I am 51 minutes into this recording. This is very long. Load map is not set before reading it, and that is because it has not actually been defined at the top of the constructor here. Because methods are just variables. I cannot stress that enough. Fail to open map1.bug for buffer load. That is probably because it's in a folder that I did not include in the file path. Here we go. All right, so it loaded some stuff, and JSON was printed out. So you have the scale, you have the position, you have the rotation. The scale is just 1 uniformly, and the rotation is 0. The positions are their things. You also have their names. All right, we're making progress. Next, if this is a struct, and I can get rid of the show debug message now, we are going to... I'm just going to call it... No. Not even. There's no need to read everything out one by one. Because all I really need to do is instantiate an entity and add it to the DS list. That can be data.position.x, data.position.y. It's just data.name, right? Pretty sure. Okay, that should actually put the trees and stuff back where they were. And whatever. In the future, I will go, yeah, there we go, cool. And as needed, the towers did not spawn. That would have been bad. That was everything, right? If I were to completely go nuts and then save it and then restart it, it would be things would be where they belong. Map1.bug, and it did it fine. Like I said, there's going to be more done with this in the future. I may turn it into a binary, into snap to binary later, and indeed, looks like everything is where it belongs. I may turn this into binary when it comes to releasing a game, just for the sake of speeding up loading a bit. But I think that's good for now. I'm going to end this off. That took longer than I thought, but simultaneously shorter than I thought, for considering that we're starting to make a level editor. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. If you want to contribute towards these videos being made, there's a link to a Patreon thingy in the places where people often put Patreon link thingies. Otherwise, the code for this project is I should, speaking of code, remember to commit this. Actually, that's just loading the JSON, isn't it? If you want the code for this, link in the video description. Check for the tag 0.11. Last week I said 0.9, but that was incorrect. It should have been 0.10. Hopefully future self would have remembered to put that in a correction on the screen. I don't even know how long I've been doing this for now, apparently. I try to post 2 of these videos a week. One of these, one making a tower defense game, and one game maker tutorial, often to do with 3D, sometimes to do with other things. Otherwise, I hope you found that interesting, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Edward Holt, Indie Punch, PoshoDev, and Zenith for supporting these videos. If you want your name in the credits and to force me to say them out loud at the end, head over to the Patreon page in the video description and join the fun.